On June 23, 1944, deep in the mid-Atlantic Ocean, about 170 nautical miles west of the Cape Verde Islands, Commander Yuno Kamio stood in the cramped control room of the I-52, a large Japanese cargo submarine. It was carrying precious war materials including 2 tons of gold, 120 tons of tin, and other vital supplies bound for German-occupied France. Through the periscope, he watched the German U-530 submarine slip away into the darkness after successfully transferring radar equipment and 2 technicians. The rendezvous had gone smoothly, and soon the I-52 would surface for its night run towards Europe, cruising at 15 knots under the starless sky. Everything seemed perfect. Within 3 hours, however, Commander Kamio and his 94 crewmen would be dead, victims of a technology they didn't even know existed. As their submarine broke apart, the sounds were captured by American aircraft flying overhead, using special devices dropped from torpedo bombers. These sonar buoys floating on the ocean's surface transmitted the dying sounds of the I-52 to operators stationed miles away. This was not just the loss of a single submarine. It was the beginning of the destruction of Japan's naval confidence. The oceans, once the pathway to Japan's empire, had transformed into an American surveillance grid where nothing could hide. The technology gap was already growing, and it would be measured in statistics that shattered every belief the Japanese held about their capabilities and their chances of survival. Between 1941 and 1945, American submarines sank 130-14 Japanese ships totaling 5.3 million tons, 56% of all Japanese merchant losses. In contrast, Japanese submarines sank only 194 Allied ships, totaling 1 million tons. The difference was not just in numbers, it was about how each nation approached undersea warfare, production, and technology. While Japan built massive submarines capable of carrying aircraft and circling the globe, the U.S. produced sonar systems that could detect these submarines from miles away. Japanese engineers created remarkable vessels, but American factories churned out sonar buoys, radar systems, and acoustic torpedoes faster than Japan could develop countermeasures. The transformation didn't occur in one dramatic moment, but through countless encounters, where Japanese submariners slowly realized they were being hunted by invisible forces, tracked by technologies they couldn't comprehend, and eliminated by an industrial machine of unimaginable scale. Lieutenant Commander Nukio Nambu, the commanding officer of the I-401, a massive Japanese submarine aircraft carrier, would later tell American interrogators that he realized Japan had lost the war not from any battle, but from hearing American radio traffic during a patrol. The sheer efficiency and scale of American operations made Japan's resources seem minuscule by comparison. For many Japanese submariners, this realization came during direct, terrifying encounters with American anti-submarine technology, encounters that left survivors stunned and demoralized. The story of how Japanese submariners came to understand American technological superiority wasn't about dramatic battles. It was about gradual realization and technological shock, so profound that it transformed confident warriors into men who understood their cause was hopeless long before Japan officially surrendered. When Japan entered World War II in December 1941, its submarine force was one of the best in the world. Japan had around 70 ocean-going submarines, many of which were revolutionary in design. The I-400 class submarines, the largest in the world until nuclear-powered vessels came along in the 1960s, were 400 feet long and displaced 5,900 tons when submerged. These submarines could carry 3 aircraft, launch them via catapult, and strike targets as far as New York or the Panama Canal. They had enough fuel to circumnavigate the globe 1.5 times without refueling. Japan also built smaller submarines, like the Type C cargo submarines, which were capable of traveling 21,000 nautical miles, carrying vital materials between Japan and its allies. Japanese submariners were well-trained, disciplined, and confident, with many having years of experience. In the early months of the war, Japanese submarines had successful operations, including the attack on Pearl Harbor. Their primary strategy focused on fleet support, reconnaissance, and attacking high-value military targets. However, this tactical focus would prove disastrous. While Japanese submarines hunted American warships, American submarines were systematically destroying the merchant fleet that kept Japan's war economy alive. More importantly, the American focus on commerce raiding meant Japanese submariners would encounter American Submarine technology in the most dangerous contexts. When American forces were on high alert and heavily protected. The first encounters with American Sonar Buoys occurred in 1944, after American industry perfected the technology. Sonar Buoys were small, battery-powered sonar units dropped by aircraft to float on the ocean's surface. These devices could listen for submarine sounds and transmit them to the aircraft above, revolutionizing anti-submarine warfare. Previously, aircraft hunting submarines had to maintain visual contact or use radar, which only worked when the submarine was surfaced. Sonar Buoys changed all of that. An aircraft could drop a series of color-coded sonar buoys to create an underwater listening grid. The aircraft would then monitor each buoy, listening for sounds made by a submarine. For Commander Camillo and the crew of the I-52, the first sign something was wrong came at 11:40 p.m. on June 23, 1944. Lieutenant Commander Jesse D. Taylor's Avenger torpedo bomber, launched from the USS Bogue, detected the I-52 on radar while it was surfaced. Taylor dropped flares, illuminating the massive submarine, then attacked with depth bombs as the I-52 dived. The first attack missed, but explosions rang close, signaling the beginning of the end. On June 23, 1944, Commander Camillo and his crew aboard the I-52 were on a routine mission in the mid-Atlantic Ocean, carrying critical war materials like gold, tin, and other supplies destined for German-occupied France. As the submarine cruised smoothly, Commander Camillo observed the German U-530 slip away after transferring radar equipment and technicians. Everything seemed perfect, until within hours Camillo and his 94 crew members, along with 14 passengers and 2 German technicians, would be dead. The destruction of the I-52 was caused by a technology they never knew existed. American aircraft, equipped with sonar buoys, had detected the submarine. These sonar buoys, small devices dropped from aircraft, could listen for the sounds of a submarine's propellers and machinery, transmitting this information to operators above. With this new technology, American aircraft could track submarines underwater, making it easier to target and eliminate them. The crew of the I-52 had no idea that they were being hunted by this advanced technology. Commander Camillo's final moments were recorded on wire spools, preserving the sounds of the submarine's death throes as it sank to the ocean floor 17,000 feet below. The sonar recordings, now preserved in the National Archives, captured the last sounds of a submarine that had been unaware of its technological vulnerability. The sinking of the I-52 shocked Japanese submariners, as it revealed that American aircraft could track submarines even when they dove to escape detection. This was a game changer. It meant that no matter how deep a Japanese submarine went, it was still visible to American sonar. The U.S. Navy's use of radar, sonar buoys, and acoustic torpedoes like the Mark 24 mine, also known as FIDO, made submarine hunting a systematic operation rather than a chance encounter. Between 1943 and 1945, American hunter-killer groups, such as the one aboard the USS Bogue, sank 13 German and Japanese submarines using these technologies. Japanese submariners began reporting strange encounters with American aircraft, which seemed to know their exact location even when they were submerged. Depth charges and torpedoes would land with frightening accuracy, and evasive maneuvers couldn't escape the tracking of these weapons. This new American technology, which Japan could neither match nor understand, struck fear into the hearts of Japanese submariners. The psychological impact of this realization deepened with Operation Barney in June 1945, when American submarines, equipped with FM sonar, penetrated the Sea of Japan, a region Japan believed was secure due to its heavily mined waters. The FM sonar, which emitted a distinct sound when it detected mines, allowed American submarines to navigate through these minefields with ease, a feat Japanese planners thought was impossible. Between June 9 and June 24, 1945, these submarines sank 28 Japanese ships, including a submarine and a destroyer. This success showed that American submarines could operate freely in waters that Japan thought were impenetrable, further undermining Japanese confidence. The psychological blow was immense. If the U.S. Navy could navigate through these heavily defended waters, then no place in the ocean was safe. Japanese commanders knew they were being hunted by forces with technological capabilities far beyond their own. The technological gap went beyond sonar. American submarines had radar systems that could detect surface targets from over 20 miles away. In contrast, Japanese submarines only received radar in 1944, and even then, it was of limited capability. American submarines could track Japanese vessels from beyond visual range, giving them a significant advantage. On top of that, American forces had broken Japanese codes, allowing them to know Japanese submarine schedules, patrol areas, and operational plans in advance. The disparity in industrial capabilities also became apparent. While Japan struggled to maintain its submarine fleet, American shipyards produced 314 submarines between 1941 and 1945, replacing losses faster than they occurred. American submarines were built with standardized parts, allowing for quick repairs and replacements. Meanwhile, Japanese submarines often waited weeks or months for repairs due to shortages of parts. This industrial advantage was evident in the torpedo situation as well. American submarines started the war with defective Mark 14 torpedoes, but by 1943, the issues were fixed. They also introduced the Mark 18 torpedo, which left no wake, making it even harder for targets to detect. In contrast, Japanese torpedoes, though reliable, were produced in far fewer quantities, forcing Japanese submariners to use them sparingly. The result of these technological and industrial disparities was a stark reality. Japan's submarine fleet was slowly being eliminated. Every encounter with American anti-submarine forces reinforced the fact that Japan's technological capabilities were no match for America's. In 1944 alone, American submarines sank 92 Japanese merchant vessels, totaling over 2.3 million tons. Japan couldn't replace these losses, and the ocean, once a Japanese stronghold, had now become a battlefield where they were hunted relentlessly by superior American technology. By August 1945, Japan's merchant marine capacity had dwindled from around 6 million tons in 1941 to just 2 million tons, with only 320,000 tons still capable of carrying cargo. The destruction of Japanese shipping was more than a military issue. It was the choking of Japan's entire war economy. Supplies like rice from Southeast Asia, oil from the Dutch East Indies, and materials such as rubber, tin, and tungsten could no longer reach Japan. American submarines had effectively blockaded these essential supplies, patrolling the sea lanes and cutting off Japan's lifeline. By 1945, American submarines were having trouble finding large enough targets to justify torpedo use, as Japan's merchant fleet had been nearly wiped out. The few remaining ships stayed close to coastlines, or used narrow channels where submarines couldn't operate easily. Some ships simply stayed in port, unwilling to risk the open sea. Japanese cabinet members later admitted that the loss of shipping, primarily due to American submarines, was the biggest factor in Japan's defeat, acknowledging that these submarines were more effective than any other weapon system. For the Japanese submariners who survived the war and witnessed American operations after surrender, the technological gap was devastating. Captain Arizumi, a key figure behind the I-400 submarine program, was one of Japan's most experienced submarine officers. Unable to face surrender, he took his own life aboard the I-401. Recognizing the overwhelming technological advantage the U.S. held, the I-400 and I-401, two massive submarine aircraft carriers, surrendered in August 1945. Despite their impressive size and capabilities, these submarines had been rendered useless. They never fired a shot in battle, and their planned strikes on Ulithi Atoll and the Panama Canal never materialized. These colossal vessels, designed with thousands of engineering hours and scarce resources, contributed nothing to Japan's war effort, because American technological superiority made their missions impossible. American forces boarded these Japanese submarines and were astonished by their size and advanced design, but they also found critical weaknesses. The hulls weren't as strong as American or German submarines, limiting their safe diving depth. The submarines were easy to detect on sonar due to their large size and distinctive acoustic signatures. Japan didn't have radar until late in the war, and they lacked FM sonar, which could detect mines. Their anti-aircraft defenses were insufficient to protect them from increasingly effective American aircraft. Most critically, Japanese submarines lacked the integrated fire control systems that made American submarines so deadly. American subs used target data computers that calculated firing solutions automatically, while Japanese submarines relied on manual calculations that were slower, more error-prone, and risked exposing the submarines during attacks. The technological gap between the two nations was not subtle. It was profound and affected every aspect of submarine operations. The human cost of this disparity was staggering. Japan lost 130 submarines during the war, nearly double the loss rate of American submarines. Of the 70 submarines Japan had in December 1941, along with those built during the war, most were destroyed by American anti-submarine forces using technologies like sonar, radar, aerial attacks, and depth charges. Around 10,000 Japanese submariners died, a casualty rate of over 70%. Submarine service, once considered prestigious, became known as a death sentence by the end of the war. Families knew that sending their sons into submarine duty meant they likely wouldn't come back. The Japanese submarine force, once proud and confident, was left demoralized and broken by the end of the war. The psychological transformation of Japanese submariners mirrored that of German POWs in America, but it came through direct encounters with American technological superiority at sea. Both groups realized, through different experiences, that Japan and Germany had faced industrial powers with technological capabilities far beyond anything the Axis powers had anticipated. When Japanese submariners surrendered in August 1945, they were shown American submarines and their advanced technology they had never seen before. They were given tours of American naval facilities and shown how American forces produced weapons and systems with unmatched efficiency. They examined sonar systems that had tracked them, radar systems that allowed American submarines to see beyond visual range, and acoustic torpedoes that had destroyed so many Japanese submarines. Lieutenant Commander Nukio Nambu, taken aboard the USS Segundo after surrendering the I-401, was shown the submarine's radar, sonar, fire control systems, and torpedo mechanisms. Everything was more advanced than anything Japan had. More importantly, it all worked reliably. American submariners operated their vessels with confidence, knowing their technology was superior and their support was guaranteed. Lieutenant Commander Johnson and his crew had survived 9 war patrols, sunk Japanese vessels, and evaded enemy anti-submarine forces. They were confident they would make it through the war. In contrast, Japanese submariners had no such confidence. They operated with the constant knowledge that American technology could track, find, and destroy them. The psychological burden was immense. Lieutenant Commander Nukio Nambu later told interrogators that he realized Japan had lost the war not when he heard about Hiroshima or Nagasaki, but months earlier. It was when he intercepted American radio communications and noticed the casual efficiency with which the U.S. coordinated operations across vast distances. The scale of American operations, the abundance of resources, and the technological sophistication that was evident in everyday procedures all pointed to capabilities that Japan simply couldn't match. After Japan's surrender, the evidence continued to mount. Japanese submariners were brought to American bases, where they saw captured submarines being studied. They also witnessed the surrender ceremony in Tokyo Bay on September 2, 1945, aboard the USS Missouri, where American flags were hoisted on the I-400 and I-401 submarines. This was a powerful symbol of America's victory. The American submarines had defeated Japan's submarine fleet through technological and industrial superiority. When the I-400 and I-41 submarines were taken to Hawaii for detailed examination, American naval engineers carefully disassembled and studied every component. The Japanese crew members, acting as technical advisors, observed as the Americans methodically photographed, measured, and documented every system on their submarines. While the American engineers were impressed by some aspects of Japanese engineering, they were not intimidated. They knew these submarines well. They had already defeated them, not through superior seamanship, but through superior technology and industrial capacity. The final blow came when the I-400, I-401, and other captured Japanese submarines were deliberately sunk as target ships off the coast of Hawaii in mid-1946. The destruction of these once proud vessels was driven partly by Soviet demands to study Japanese submarine technology, but also symbolized the fact that American submarine technology had advanced beyond anything Japan's submarines could teach. The Japanese submarines, which had once represented the peak of Japan's naval power, were now simply target practice. Their destruction barely registered in American records, but for Japanese submariners, the message was clear: Japan had built impressive submarines, but America had built technology that rendered them obsolete. As survivors of the war returned home, they shared their experiences. Many wrote memoirs or gave lectures to Japan's self-defense force, detailing their shock at American technological capabilities. The submarine veterans associations formed in the 1950s and 1960s focused on understanding what went wrong, why Japan's submarines had achieved so little despite impressive engineering. The unanimous conclusion was that technological inferiority, industrial weakness, and strategic miscalculations had doomed the Japanese submarine force. No amount of courage, skill, or determination could overcome the fundamental imbalance in capabilities. American submarines had technological advantages in every aspect of operations detection, fire control, communication, navigation, and logistics. Regardless of how well designed or skillfully operated, Japanese submarines were always at a permanent disadvantage. The human cost of this was staggering. Japan lost 130 submarines during the war, nearly double the loss rate of American submarines. Of the 70 submarines Japan had at the start of the war, most were destroyed by American anti-submarine forces using technologies like sonar, radar, and depth charges. Around 10,000 Japanese submariners died, a casualty rate of over 70%. What had once been seen as an honorable and prestigious service was now considered a death sentence by the end of the war. The psychological shift in Japanese submariners mirrored the experience of German POWs in America, but with one major difference. Japanese submariners faced American technological superiority directly at sea. Both groups realized, in different ways, that they had challenged nations whose technological and industrial capabilities far exceeded anything the Axis powers had anticipated. When Japanese submariners surrendered, they were shown American submarines and their advanced technology. They toured American naval facilities and saw firsthand the technology they had been up against. They handled sonar systems, radar equipment, and acoustic torpedoes, technologies that had destroyed so many Japanese submarines. Lieutenant Commander Nambu, after surrendering the I-401, was given a tour of the USS Segundo. He saw the radar, sonar, fire control systems, and torpedo mechanisms. Everything was more advanced than Japan's. More importantly, everything worked reliably. American submariners operated with casual confidence, knowing their technology was superior and their support was guaranteed. By the 1980s, Japan's submarines were among the finest in the world, incorporating lessons learned from their defeat. The Japanese submarine force had gone from being hunted by American sonar to building submarines using equivalent technology. The defeat had taught Japan the importance of technological excellence and integrated systems. The economic miracle of the 1950s and 1960s, driven by companies like Sony, Toyota, and Honda, was partly influenced by the lessons learned during the war. These companies focused on quality, reliability, and continuous improvement, drawing from military failures and applying those lessons to industrial success. The technological capabilities that killed Commander Kamiyo and his crew in June 1944, recorded on sonar, were refined over time and became standard in modern navies worldwide. Technologies like sonar, radar, and acoustic torpedoes, once shockingly advanced to Japanese submariners, now form the backbone of global naval operations. The war's technological revolution in naval warfare continues to shape modern submarines and naval strategy. The story of Japanese submarine crews, realizing that the ocean was no longer theirs, is ultimately a tale of technological evolution in warfare. In the end, superior technology, backed by industrial power, triumphed over courage, skill, and determination. Japanese submariners were neither cowards nor incompetent. They simply faced forces with technological advantages they couldn't counter. The shift from confidence to the recognition of defeat was a psychological journey that mirrored the experience of German POWs in America. Though under different circumstances, both groups encountered American capabilities they couldn't explain, couldn't fight against, and eventually couldn't deny. After the war, both groups returned home with lessons that shaped post-war development. They emphasized the importance of matching American technological capabilities, rather than merely admiring or resenting them. The ocean that Japanese submariners once confidently prowled had become an American domain, dominated by technology and industry. Sonar buoys floated on the surface, capturing sounds from below. Radar reached beyond visual range. Acoustic torpedoes tracked submarines autonomously. Hunter-killer groups coordinated aircraft and surface vessels into integrated systems that hunted and destroyed submarines systematically. By mid-1945, the transformation was complete. Japanese submarines no longer had anywhere to hide or hope of survival. In June 1945, Operation Barney saw 9 American submarines emerge from the Sea of Japan after sinking 28 Japanese ships in waters Japan believed were impregnable. The psychological defeat of Japanese naval forces was now undeniable. If American submarines could penetrate the most heavily defended waters using technology to navigate through minefields, Japan's naval supremacy was over. The ocean now belonged to those who controlled the technology. Japanese submariners understood this lesson firsthand. They had been hunted, tracked, and killed by technologies they couldn't see or counter. Those who survived understood that Japan's defeat was inevitable once America's industrial and technological superiority was fully realized. The ocean had never truly belonged to Japan. It only took time for this reality to unfold. American sonar systems, radar, acoustic torpedoes, and industrial capacity had revolutionized submarine warfare. Regardless of Japanese submariners' skill or bravery, they were operating in a battle where the enemy held decisive technological advantages. This realization came gradually through encounters, narrow escapes, and reports from other submarines. By 1945, it was clear to all survivors the ocean was no longer theirs. It now belonged to the nation that had built the technology to control it. America won the undersea war not through better seamanship, but through superior science, engineering, and industrial capacity. This legacy endures in modern naval warfare. Sonar remains fundamental to submarine operations, and acoustic torpedoes are standard weapons. Sonar buoys, much improved since 1944, continue to patrol the oceans, deployed from aircraft and ships. The technological revolution that shocked Japanese submariners during the war is still evolving, with modern submarines now using capabilities that would astonish both American and Japanese forces from World War II. The essential lesson remains unchanged: technological superiority, supported by industrial power, determines the outcome in modern warfare. Japanese submariners learned this lesson through their defeat, and it influenced Japan's post-war reconstruction. Their experiences shaped Japan's industrial development and military planning for generations. The submarines that once represented Japanese naval power are now museum exhibits or lie on the ocean floor, symbols of engineering excellence made obsolete by superior technology. The crews who operated these submarines carried forward lessons that shaped nations and their futures. The story of Japanese submariners, encountering American sonar and realizing the ocean was no longer theirs, stands as a testament to technological change in warfare. From confidence to recognition of defeat, from assumed superiority to the acknowledgement of inferiority, their journey not only transformed individuals, but also influenced entire nations. The ocean changed hands, not through surface battles, but through invisible technologies that listened beneath the waves, transmitting data to forces that hunted with scientific precision. Commander Yuno Kamio and the thousands of Japanese submariners who died during the war were defeated by an industrial and technological system they couldn't comprehend until it was too late. Those who survived carried the knowledge that shaped post-war Japan and influenced global naval development for decades. The ocean now belonged to those who controlled the technology to master it, a lesson learned the hard way by Japanese submariners between 1941 and 1945, and one that remains relevant in modern naval warfare and technological competition.